where silence hides the loudest stories. If you're new here, welcome, and if you've been here before, you already know the truth never stays buried for long. Music fades slightly, a moment of quiet. They thought I would obey. They thought I would listen, stay quiet, follow orders like everyone else. But what they found proved them wrong. It started on a foggy morning, the kind where the world feels like it's holding its breath. I was sitting in my car, a faded silver sedan that had seen better days, parked at the edge of the old factory district. The air smelled of rust and rain. My phone buzzed, one message, 3 words. "Don't do it." I stared at the screen for a moment. That was all it said. No name, no number I recognized, just a warning. But the thing about warnings is, they only work if you're afraid, and I wasn't afraid anymore. Because this time, I knew the truth. For months, I had followed every instruction they gave me. They said it was for training, that I had to earn their trust, stay in line, and one day, I'd see the bigger picture. They said obedience was the key. At first, I believed them. They made it sound noble, like we were part of something greater. They had the tone, the confidence, the authority, the kind that makes you doubt your own judgment. But it's always the same pattern. People in power, pretending to know what's best for you, and you just go along until something breaks. That something broke 3 nights before the message. It was around 2 a.m. I had been called into a warehouse, supposedly for a simple delivery run. But when I got there, I noticed the camera's small, black domes mounted in every corner, hidden, but not invisible. They weren't recording the inventory, they were recording me. That was the first time I realized this wasn't about trust, it was about control. I started asking questions. They told me to stop. I asked again. They said I was losing focus when I wouldn't back down. They said I was a liability. That word stuck with me, a liability. That's what you call someone when you're done pretending they matter. I remember the day they tried to make me prove my loyalty. We were in the parking lot outside the factory. The air was heavy with that industrial chill that sinks into your bones. There were 5 of them, all wearing black jackets, no logos, no names. One of them, the one who always spoke first, handed me a folder. Inside were photos, people, addresses, notes. He said, "You'll deliver this. No questions." I asked what it was. He smiled, that kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes, and said, "You don't need to know." I looked at the faces in those photos. None of them were strangers. They were people who used to work here, people who had disappeared. That's when I decided I wouldn't obey anymore, so I took the folder. I nodded like I agreed, but instead of following orders, I followed the truth. I spent the next 2 days tracing the locations, connecting the dots. The addresses all led to abandoned buildings, each one linked to a different project. The company had shut down years ago. But when I got to the last one, a storage unit on the outskirts of town, I found something I wasn't supposed to see. Boxes, hundreds of them, labeled with codes, names, dates inside, files, contracts. Surveillance footage of me. I remember sitting there, surrounded by evidence of every move I'd made for months. Every conversation, every route, every hesitation. They had tracked it all. I felt the weight of it, not just the betrayal, but the realization that I had been part of their story without knowing it. They didn't want loyalty, they wanted control. They didn't want a team, they wanted puppets. And I was done being one. I copied everything, every file, every video, every log, loaded it onto a drive and left before dawn. The roads were empty, the city asleep. The only sound was the hum of my engine and the rain tapping on the windshield. That's when I got the message, "Don't do it." I almost laughed because it was already done. The next morning, they called me in. They said there'd been a miscommunication, that I'd misunderstood my role, that they just needed me to come in and clarify a few things. I could hear the rehearsed calm in their voices, but I also heard the tension underneath. They knew. I parked outside the same warehouse. This time I left the car running. I walked inside, the echo of my footsteps bouncing off the concrete walls. They were waiting, the same five, same jackets, same cold eyes. The leader spoke first. "We heard you've been asking questions again." I smiled. I found answers. That's when I dropped the drive on the table. His expression didn't change, but the others shifted. You could feel it, that silent ripple of fear that moves through people when the illusion breaks. He asked, "What did you do?" I said, "I stopped obeying." There's something powerful about saying that out loud. It's not defiance for the sake of it, it's clarity. When you stop obeying lies, you start hearing your own truth again. He told me I was making a mistake, that I didn't understand the consequences, but I did. They'd already taught me what happens when you obey. I walked out. They didn't stop me, not then. Maybe they thought I wouldn't go far. Maybe they thought fear would pull me back. But fear doesn't work on someone who's already lost everything. I drove straight to the press. Not the big ones, the small, independent ones that still care about stories like this. I sent them everything. Every file, every clip, every hidden truth they'd tried to bury. Then I disappeared. For weeks, silence, no calls, no messages. Then, slowly, the story began to spread. First on small blogs, then forums, then news outlets. Headlines started appearing. Whistleblower exposes corporate surveillance network. Missing employees linked to secret program. The obedience files. And that's when they realized they had underestimated me. They thought I would obey, but what they found was someone who refused to be silent. You know, people often ask me if I regret it, if I wish I'd stayed quiet, kept my job, kept my safety, kept my anonymity. But the truth, every time I think about those photos in the folder, those faces that disappeared, I know I made the only choice that mattered. Sometimes obedience is easier. It feels safer. But silence always comes with a price. And when you stop paying it, that's when you finally start living free. Months later, I went back to the factory. It was empty now, sealed off, condemned. The sign out front had faded, half torn by the wind. I walked through the ruins, broken glass, rusted machines, papers scattered across the floor. But it was quiet, peaceful almost. In that silence, I realized something. They had built an empire on control. And it took just one person saying no to bring it all down. That's the thing about systems of obedience. They only work as long as you play along. When I got back to my car, I noticed something on the windshield. A note written in the same handwriting as the message from before. This time it said, "You were never alone." Pause, soft wind sound effect. I never found out who sent the messages. Maybe it was someone inside. Maybe someone who wanted to rebel but couldn't. Maybe someone who already had. But whoever it was, they were right. No one ever stands alone in the truth, even when it feels like you're the only one speaking it. Sometimes I still think about those nights, the fog, the cameras, the silence. I remember how small I felt back then, how powerless, and I think about how easy it is for power to hide behind obedience. That's the trick they play. They make you think resistance is dangerous, that silence keeps you safe, but silence isn't safety, it's surrender. People always say truth has a price, and it does, but obedience has one too. It just collects interest in fear. They wanted me to obey, they wanted me quiet, but what they found instead was the truth roaring through every lie they built, and once the truth starts speaking, it doesn't stop. Sound of engine starting, light rain hitting windshield, So if you ever find yourself in that moment, standing between what you're told and what you know, remember this: you owe no obedience to deception, and the truth doesn't need permission to be spoken.